There are surveys in the middle of your tables. Please complete those after the event and just leave them on the back tables. But the pens are yours to keep. I know everyone loves our pens. And we're going to have a door prize drawing after the event. So the prizes you saw in the back, we're going to draw for those. But we're going to get started. Feel free to keep eating during the event. I'm Allison Haynes. I'm the coordinator of disability services. And I was able to see Ethan speak at a conference that we went to last year, and I'm really glad he was able to come here today. Ethan Fisher is a storytelling, mental health, and alcohol substance abuse keynote speaker. He is here to talk to you about the choices and decisions we all make every day. His story has been written about in numerous books, including the New York Times bestselling leadership book, multiple newspaper articles, podcasts, radio, and television shows, including Headline News and CNN, for his life mission and purpose in helping others. Welcome, Ethan.
With hypnotic philosophies and deep ideologies, spinning perpendicular lines of subatomic hyperboles, incorporating every word and verb that I've learned, spitting on fictitious facts, stumbling acts get pinned by text, causing the brain to splatter. Blood splatters under nuclear matter. So no matter the geographical demographics, I spit lines for the intellectual minds. How many of you caught what I just said? Read a book. No, I'm just playing. All right, I open up that event every single time I do this keynote because this is an icebreaker for me. I love writing rhymes, but I'm not here to talk to you guys about the hundreds of thousands of poems and verses that I've written. I'm here to talk to you about my life, my choices, and my consequences. You see, I've basically made every bad decision, every bad choice that you can make as a student and a student athlete. And I'm here to tell you this story. But before I get into my story, I want to be completely transparent with every single one of you. This keynote that you're about to see is mentally and physically exhausting. Why? Because every time that I give this speech and every time that I practice this speech, I have to relive moments in my life that I would rather forget. But I continue to tell this story because I know I'm making a difference. I've received thousands of letters from students and teachers and professors and coaches and business owners from all over the world who said I changed or saved their life. Like, how cool is that? This is my purpose. This is my passion. This is why I wake up every single day and take my first breath is to figure out how I'm going to get to my next event. Everything I do is to be on stage telling this story. But this story is not just about me. It's about every one of you in this audience. And I want to challenge you for a second to think about this. Every single one of us, myself included, is faced with an infinite amount of possibilities into who we're going to become in the next 3, 5, and 10 years down the road. And it starts with the choices and decisions that you make at this exact moment. The choices that you make today matter, whether you realize it or not. Speaking of choice, did you know that 20% of the world's population was struggling with a mental health issue? 20%. That's 1 in 5. Look around you. 1 in 5 is struggling with a mental health issue within the last 365 days. That's according to the CDC, and I didn't make this up. But if you actually look at the research of the last 2.5 years that we've been going through this global pandemic, you'll see anywhere between 40 and 60% of the world is struggling with a mental health issue. 40 to 60% of the world is struggling with a mental health issue within the last 2.5 years. Not millions, but billions of people are struggling. Think about that. Half of this room is struggling with something, and how many are willing to admit that they're struggling with something? Not many. Now, I've been telling everybody that I hit my 3rd worst depression of my entire life during this pandemic. 3rd worst. And you're going to see I've been through a whole heck of a lot. And so my 3rd worst is saying a lot. You see, my entire livelihood, my job, my businesses, my organizations, I have 2 companies. Guess what? And it's all revolved around speaking. It was wiped out. I had no income for almost 2 years because my entire livelihood is standing on stage. And guess what? The pandemic took that all away from me. My entire purpose was wiped clean. I was on unemployment for almost 2 years trying to get speeches, online events. I busted my tail 60 hours a week, 7 days a week, just to keep my businesses afloat. What does that do to my psyche? What does that do to my mentality? I started feeling like an imposter because here I am. You guys heard that. I've been in New York Times, all this type of stuff, and my entire livelihood is gone. I felt like an imposter. I started to get depressed and mad and angry and frustrated at the world. I felt like a loser. I felt like a bum. And when you get into that psychological state, you get negative, and it just gets worse and worse and worse. And guess what? Instead of fighting it, I let it go. And I didn't realize that I started pushing the most important people away from me because I was so focused on my job that I didn't pay attention to my wife. And guess what? I hit my first worst depression my entire life because my wife in February asked for a divorce and kicked me out of the house. So I've been facing my worst depression my entire life, and you're going to see that this has been harder than anything that I've faced in my entire life. But guess what? I made a choice. I talk about my issues. I'm not afraid to admit these things in front of thousands of strangers because I know it helps. So for all of you that are struggling with some type of mental health issue or going through some type of trauma or pain, talk to a counselor, talk to a therapist. I beg and plead every single audience I go to that you go get help. Because when you don't get help, that's when bad things happen. So I got help during the pandemic. That is the only reason why I'm standing here today, because I went and got help. But before the pandemic, I was speaking all over the country, doing my events and loving my job. Like I get to work at national leadership academies and conferences all over the country. I got to speak at large auditoriums like this gym right here. 3,000 students, packed it out. And I did that little freestyle at the beginning. My microphone broke. So I had 3,000 high school students staring at me, like laughing and cracking jokes, like, what's going on with this dude? He's got no microphone. Truth is, the batteries died. It wasn't because my freestyle was that good. But I had 3,000 students staring at me. And normally I would have freaked and panicked because I don't like to be in front of crowds. But I bring this up because this slide doesn't just represent the students. It represents fear. How many of you are afraid of something? How many of you are afraid to admit that you're afraid of something? More hands, right? How many of you are afraid of heights? Yeah, this dude up here, right here. I am terrified of heights. Matter of fact, this time last year, I was painting in my house, and I'm on top of a 5 or 6 foot ladder, and I'm up at the top of the vaulted ceiling, and I'm on tippy toes trying to get to this corner. And then my wife comes in, and she starts talking to me, and I freak out. Ladder starts shaking, and I'm like, why are you talking to me? Let me get down, because I had all these thousands of thoughts running through my head that I'm going to fall, and I'm going to break my knee or my ankle or my back, and I'm going to have to go get an MRI and go to the hospital and the doctor and my hospital bills. Like I had all these thousands of thoughts going through my head. But she didn't see that. She looks at me when I get down, and she's like, why are you yelling at me? You're on a 5 foot ladder. Nothing bad's going to happen. You might sprain an ankle. But that's the thing about anxiety and fear. You get latched on to these negative thoughts and they start ruminating and getting out of control. And so here I had this tiny thing of standing on a ladder and I freak out about it, but she didn't realize that. And so when I talk about fear, I want you to understand that you need to learn how to embrace your fears and challenge yourself, because if you don't, your fears will continue to follow you for the rest of your life. I know for a fact that if I would have embraced my fears as a middle school, high school, college student, I wouldn't be where I am today, because there are fears that still follow me today. Which leads me back to this picture. 2003, I was diagnosed with social anxiety. I don't like to be around people. I don't even go to the grocery store unless I can go through the self-checkout line, because I don't want to have to talk to people. I don't go to NFL or NBA games when people invite me to fundraisers, because I don't want to be surrounded by people. I've overcome one of my greatest fears to do this job because I care about my profession and my purpose. Like, I don't think people understand how much I've overcome to be standing in front of tens of thousands of students and adults because of my fear of being in public. But because I had a greater good, I overcame these fears. And so I challenge you to face your fears, because every one of you has one. So this time last year, guess what I did? I challenged myself and I jumped out of a plane. Yeah. So I was skydiving and I got some weird dude on my back, and we got video of it, and he's got these big googly eyes and he's laughing and making fun of me. And I'm screaming like, ah, all the way to the ground. And then I land. And it wasn't that big of a deal. I'd built up all these fears and anxieties of me jumping out of a plane that didn't have any effect on me. I actually was more sick from doing all the spinning and turning than I was from the fear of actually jumping down. And so I talked to the jump instructor, and he's like, man, we do 16 of these a day. And I started formulating and calculating how many times they do it per week, and they had no accidents. So I realized I'd built up all this fear over something that was non-existent. But again, this is why I bring this up, so that you challenge yourself when you have these anxieties and these fears, that you got to overcome them. Because if you don't, they will continue to follow you day in and day out. But when I actually jumped out of that plane, I started to learn that I challenged myself. And so when I challenged myself, good things happen. In about 2017, I got invited to speak at UNLV, one of my favorite college basketball programs, unbelievable program. I wanted to play for them. Problem is, I'm 5'10" and not very good. So I wanted to play for them, but it came full circle. So they get to say, hey, why don't you come tell us your story, Mr. Fisher? We want you to talk about your non-traditional college basketball experience. See, I played college basketball, but I played college basketball at the age of 28, 29, and 30. What do you guys think of that? 28, 29, and 30. So when I go to middle schools and high schools, I tell that story, and guess what? They're all like, oh my God, Mr. Fisher, can you dunk? No. Can you touch the rim? No. Can you touch the net? No. How the heck did you play college basketball? It's like, because I was pretty good. I got skills. And so I love working with middle schools and high schools because they boost my ego, right? Then I go to college athletic programs and I tell that same story. And the dudes at UNLV go like, bro, you must suck. You must be the worst college basketball player in the country. To play college basketball at 28, 29, and 30, you must have been the oldest dude in the country. And I look at him like, no, I wasn't. I looked it up. There was some 72-year-old dude trying to play college basketball. So I was the second oldest in the country at the time. So I don't have the oldest, so I can skate by. But I look at him, and they're like, bro, you must have been a water boy or friends with the coach. And it's like, no, man, I was actually pretty good. But I played college basketball at the age of 28, 29, and 30 because of my choices and decisions that I made sitting in your seats. That little freestyle I do at the beginning, there's a reason behind that. I didn't write that freestyle when I was taking time off in between my colleges. I wrote it while I was sitting in prison. Not probation, not parole, prison. Locked away from my family and friends and every single person that meant something to me. I spent 3 years of my life locked behind razor wire fences, armed guards, white brick walls, silver sinks, green mattresses, wearing the same boots and greens every day of my life for 3 years. I'm a felon for the rest of my life. During this divorce process, I couldn't find housing. People don't think about those unintended consequences. I'm a felon and I can't get jobs and housing still to this day. 50% of the places I looked at immediately have no felon. So when I tell people that I went to prison, I'm still dealing with these consequences every single day of my life, and it's because of the choices I made sitting in your seats. But I tell people all the time, I'll go back to prison in a heartbeat. I'll do 3 more years, 5 more years. I'll do 10 more years in those cells if I could take back what I did. I can't. This is life. There's no rewind button. There's no pause button. The moment that we all get up and leave this conference room, we are all faced with our choices. We are all faced with our decisions. And I'm stuck with mine until the day I die. Now you're probably wondering, why are we listening to some convicted felon who went to prison? Here's the thing, I'm no different than any of you. This is my middle school picture. We all went to middle school at some point. I haven't really got much taller or stronger or bigger since then, but this picture came on Facebook a couple years ago. And everybody started tagging their names and tagging my name and talking about how amazing 8th grade and middle school was. I untagged my name because I didn't want to be a part of it. What they didn't realize is I hated middle school. I was popular. I played football, basketball, track, golf, soccer, you name it, I did it. I was friends with everybody. But something happened when I hit middle school. I started comparing myself to other people. I started worrying about how I looked or how I presented myself. I started to doubt who I was. You see, I was the second smallest kid in my grade, and people would pick on me. Even though I was popular, I'd still get picked on because I was so small. oh, Ethan, you're never going to do this. You're never going to do that. You're never going to make it. You're never going to play basketball because you're too tiny. And that started to affect how I thought about myself. And then on top of that, I started to get this complexion and I'm already shy and I couldn't talk to girls and people are dating in middle school. So I started going home and I'd have these ruminating thoughts of all this darkness and depression and anxiety. And I kept thinking, I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not capable. I can't do this. Everybody's making fun of me. And it got to the point where I'm screaming at the top of my lungs at my parents that I'm going to kill myself. And I grab a butcher knife out of the drawer and I run out to the barn and I have it to my wrist. And my parents stop me. Now, I don't know if I would have gone through with it or if it was just a cry for help. But what I do know is that something was seriously wrong. But I grew up in the 80s and 90s where we didn't talk about mental health. I don't even think mental health was a term. Like if you were dealing with some type of mental anxiety or pressure inside, people would tell you they were crazy. You'd have to go to the loony bin. And as an 8th grader, I didn't want people calling me crazy. So what did I do? I kept it locked up inside and I didn't tell anybody about what was going on. I harbored all that pain and anger and resentment and that depression, that anxiety, and I buried it deep inside. And I started using alcohol and drugs as a coping mechanism, which leads me to today's society. I tell people and students all the time, I wouldn't want to grow up in this age with social media pressures and Facebook and Instagram and Snapchat and TikTok and whatever's out there right now, because you're dealing with a level of peer pressure I can't comprehend. I was in 8th grade ready to take my life and we didn't even have cell phones back in the 80s and 90s. So I can't imagine what students are going through now. The level of comparison is 24/7 and it's instantaneous. People are bullying and picking on people and talking bad about their pictures if they don't have the perfect picture up. It's destroying our communities. Our high schools are having thousands and thousands of suicides because students don't know how to deal with this peer pressure. Now, I'm fortunate and lucky I didn't grow up in this day and age because I don't know how I would have made it through high school. But I got to high school and I barely skated by and I had an opportunity to play all these sports in high school. Again, I didn't talk about my depression and my anxiety because I didn't want people to know. So I was voted most athletic in my high school. I played basketball, all that stuff. I had scholarships to go play college on track and golf and soccer and basketball and all this stuff. But nobody knew that my junior year I started to drink. And it wasn't for social. I started drinking because it was hiding my depression. By the time my senior year rolled around, I was drinking every single day. I would sneak alcohol in my golf bag as the captain of the golf team, and I would drink during practice when the golf coach wasn't around, and I started drinking heavily. And everybody thought it was me just having senioritis trying to get through high school, but the reality was I was drinking every single day because I hated my life. I wish I would have never taken that first drink my junior year in high school because it completely altered my entire life. Now, because I was good in sports, I had an opportunity to play college basketball. So my first school, I had an opportunity to go play at a community college down in Colorado, and I get there. I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't party. I'm doing everything I can to be a part of this college basketball program because you can tell at my height, I got to work really, really hard. I got dudes who are 6'7", 6'8", 6'9", that are dunking from the free throw line. So I got to compete really hard. So I'm sober and everything's going good. But then that thing called peer pressure comes around. You see, everybody starts to realize I'm on the basketball team. I'm like instantly popular. So I get invited to these dorm parties, these house parties, and I start going out after the first couple of weeks and I'm socializing. I'm drinking on the weekends and everything's going good. But then I realize I'm a freshman in college. I've got nobody telling me what to do. So I start drinking not only on the weekends, but I'm drinking on a Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday or Friday or Saturday, and I'm drinking every single day. And before I realize it, I end up drinking myself out of my basketball scholarship, and I am academically ineligible at the end of second semester. I end up losing my basketball scholarship, and let me put this in perspective, less than 4% of all high school basketball players get a chance to play on scholarship. And I threw mine away because I'd rather drink and party than go to class. So what do? I go home, I sober up, I go to another community college, I get an opportunity to play college basketball again the following year. Guess what I do? I don't drink or smoke or party the first couple weeks. I get up there and I'm busting my tail and everything's going good until it's not. You see, coach and I are fighting and he wants me to redshirt and I don't agree with him because I was better than the guards that he had. So instead of listening to coach, what do? I start drinking again. But now my drinking's even worse than it was at my last school. And I'm drinking a 30 rack a night, a bottle of vodka, and I wake up by the time semester rolls around and I have a GPA of 0.000. I have 4 Fs on my transcript that semester. 4 Fs. So what do? I call up my parents, say, Mom, Dad, I need to come home and get my grades up because I want to play college basketball again the following year. So I get to another school out in California, my 3rd college in 3 years, and I get out there. Guess what I do? I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't party. I'm doing everything I can. I'm busting my tail. I'm doing point guard drills, shooting guard drills. I'm in 200-degree heat in Northern California, and I'm busting my tail until Coach calls me into his office one day. And he's got a piece of paper, and it's my transcripts from my last school. And he's like, Ethan, you have 4 Fs on your transcripts. You can't play for us. Why didn't you tell me about this? And I played dumb and coy, and I'm like, Coach, man, I didn't think it would matter. I quit after the 2nd week. And he's like, you're ineligible, but I want you to redshirt. So I'm going to get you a job in housing, and we're going to make sure that you stay out here with us. And I look at Coach. I'm like, okay, Coach, I got you. What he didn't realize was I didn't choose the school because of Coach or my teammates. I chose the school because it was the second most party school in the nation at the time, Chico State. So when I left Coach's office, I didn't go to get my grades up. I didn't go get a housing. I didn't get my stuff worked on. I went straight to the liquor store, bought a bottle of vodka, and started drinking and smoking. So here I am in Northern California. I've got no basketball holding me down. So what do I start doing? I'm drinking, I'm smoking, I'm doing ecstasy and coke and Vicodin and perk and anything I can get my hands on. And before I realize it, I'm sitting in the back of getaway cars with people who are robbing people at gunpoint to pay for my drug habit. Now my mom hears what's going on, and she calls me. And she's like, Ethan, you need to come home because you're going to end up dead or in jail. And I'll never forget, I hang up the phone with my mom that night. And she didn't know this, but I made a decision that I was going to kill myself. You see, I didn't want to go home and face the embarrassment of failing out of another school. I didn't want people to make fun of me for being an alcoholic junkie and losing my scholarship. So I called up my buddy and I told him to bring every drug that he had. And I wanted to go to this rave. I remember taking 7 pills of ecstasy, rolling up 2 blunts with coke, and I smoke it. And the next thing I know, I'm underneath this park bench and I'm getting ready to jump in front of a train. And I pull out my wallet with this picture of my newborn baby brother. Never seen his face, never heard him cry. This picture right here is the only reason why I'm standing here today. I remember putting that picture back in my wallet and going home and sobering up and calling my mom and saying, Mom, I want to come home and see my baby brother. I want to go home and be able to see this dude. So I'm going home and I'm babysitting this dude and life's going good. I'm going to community college. I'm getting my grades up because I want to go play college basketball again the following year. Following year, I get another opportunity to go play for another school called Metro. It's one of the top Division II programs in the country. Guess what I start doing? I start drinking and smoking again, and I end up academically ineligible before I even get to play. So I lose another opportunity. This is my 4th school in 4 years that I lose an opportunity, and they end up winning the NCAA Division II National Championship that year. And I'm sitting on a bender in San Diego watching my teammates and my coaches cut down the nets. So what do? I go on this bender and I say, Mom, Dad, I need to come home and get my grades up because I want to play college basketball again the following year. Following year, my 5th school in 5 years, now I get an opportunity to play for a bigger school. This is UNC, not North Carolina. I wasn't that good. This is UNC Greeley, Division I program. They say, Ethan, we want you to come play for us, but we're not going to give you a scholarship because we don't trust you. So here I am, guess what? I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't party. I'm busting my tail. I'm doing everything to be a part of this program, and I'm working my tail off for these coaches because I'm so excited to be there. Then I'm hit with this roadblock or this obstacle. I'm hit with a choice. See, Coach wants me to change my way of playing. And he's like, you need to stop being this and one crossover mixtape basketball player, and you need to be a point guard. Well, I don't listen to Coach, and what do I start doing? I start going back to my drinking and my smoking, and now it's worse than it's ever been before. And I'm sitting in Lawrence and Hall, and I'm drinking a 5th of Christian Brothers every night. And before I realize it, I wake up at semester with a .186 GPA. .186 GPA. I'm academically ineligible. I lose my opportunity to play for a Division I program. So here I am at the bottom of Lawrence and Hall, and guess what? I'm suicidal again. You see, what people don't tell you about drugs and alcohol is that they're major depressants. So every time that I got into one of these negative alcoholic benders and these drug benders, I would end up more depressed than I was when I first started. And I'll never forget, I called my dad at the bottom of Lawrenson Hall, which was the dorm I was staying in. And I call him on this payphone and I'm like, hey, Pops, man, I don't want to live anymore. I can't do this. And he's like, Ethan, you need to go see a psychologist. And it was the first time I ever listened to my dad about something emotional. You see, he was a big football player, wrestler, all that type of stuff. And we didn't talk about emotions in our house. So when he told me to go see a counselor, I listened to him. I took the first step. I actually went and saw a counselor. Reality is 2/3 of all college students who are suffering from depression will not seek help. And again, I will beg and plead every single time I do these slides in this keynote that if you are struggling with some type of mental health issue, go see a counselor. Do not be embarrassed or ashamed because they will literally save your life. I found this survey during the pandemic and this just blew me away. 4,000 students, just like yourselves, were randomly surveyed during the height of the pandemic. 4,000 students, and they found out that a serious percentage of students had seriously considered suicide in the last 30 days. Now, I thought it might have been 5% or 10%. It was 26% of the student body was figured out that they were seriously suicidal. Think about that. That is 1,000 out of 4,000 students that were seriously considering taking their life during the pandemic. This mental health battle and war is not going anywhere. How many of those individuals got help during the pandemic? Not many. How many of them are still dealing with the trauma and the pain from the pandemic and not talking to a counselor or a therapist about it? How many are still having those suicidal thoughts and they're not getting help? This is my job, to open up this conversation that nobody wants to talk about. Because I know for a fact that if I would have addressed my mental health issues and actually listened to my counselor, which is step 2, things would have been completely different. But I didn't listen to my counselor, and I'll never forget, I went in and I did my intake, and I'm bobbing and weaving in and out of the doors because I didn't want people to recognize me. I had my hoodie on and my hat forward and my headphones on, and I go do my intake. And she's like, Ethan, you're an alcoholic, you have an addictive personality, you have social anxiety, and you're a manic depressive. Now, I didn't know what any of that meant. And she's like, I'm going to put you on medication, but I have one rule. One rule. Do not drink while you take these pills. Do you think I listened to her? My addict mind took over and I kept drinking and smoking and partying. And before I realized it, I woke up at the end of semester with a 0.43 GPA. 0.43. I've actually gone back and talked to all my teammates that were in that picture, and they said I used to walk around basically drooling on myself, and I had no idea what I was doing. I had a 7-foot, 300-pound teammate that would be in my dorm room, and I was writing rhymes in chalk on my dorm room wall, and I had no idea that I had my roommates even in there. That's how messed up I was, and that was because I didn't listen to my counselor, and I kept drinking and smoking. So that is the second process. If you go and see a counselor, listen to what they are saying, because they are trained professionals. They're there to help. I wish every single day I would have listened to my counselor at that time, because my life just got worse. So I leave that school and I get invited out to a house party one night the following year. And I want everybody in here to close your eyes. The screen's black on purpose. And I want you to close your eyes and I want you to visualize the people who are sitting next to you. These are your friends, your classmates. And I want you to think about the people you grew up with, your friends back home, or the friends that are in your dorm here or your apartment that aren't in this room. Your family members, your brothers, your sisters, your aunts, uncles, cousins, grandparents, your parents, anybody that's ever taken care of you, anybody that's ever made you smile and made you laugh. Now think of a man named Bill. Now Bill's 57 years old. He's got gray hair, big thick gray beard, big thick glasses. And Bill's been married to the same woman for over 30 years. They have a daughter together who ends up having 2 of her own. So Bill and his wife are grandparents to 2 kids. And they're retired and they love their life and they're just appreciating the whole fact that they're retired and they've lived every moment that they could. Now I want you to think about one of your friends that's sitting next to you, or somebody that's back in your apartment or your dorm that you're not here with. And you go to this house party or this bar and you get invited to, and your friend's acting a little off and you don't know if they drank something or took something. And you make this mental note, you got to find them a couple hours later and you can't find them. Now Bill's heading home in his white Oldsmobile, and he's thinking about his wife and his grandkids, and all of a sudden, wham! Open them. That friends you were thinking about? That was me. I went to a house party with my friends that I knew in college, and they said I started drinking and acting a little off. Next thing I know, I wake up in a hospital after a 24-hour blackout. I'm laying in the hospital, and a nurse comes in, and she's like, Ethan, do you know what you did last night? No, it wasn't good. Second nurse comes in. Do you know what you did last night? No. You drunk drove and you killed somebody. That's Bill's car. Bill never made it home to see his wife again. Never saw his daughter, his grandkids. Because I went out drinking with my friends. I told you at the beginning of this speech that this wasn't going to be easy. Because I have to relive this moment over and over and over again. And it sucks. There are days where I just lose it and I cry all day long, and there are days that I can't cry because I don't have anything left. So every time I give this speech, I'm reminded of this moment, and it hurts. Now, Bill didn't see my Suburban coming 72 miles an hour down the wrong side of a 4-lane road with no tire on one side and sparks on the other. I hit Bill at 72 miles an hour and T-boned him and killed him instantly. I drove 150 feet from the scene of the crime until the cops came and pulled me out at gunpoint and pulled me through the window because I had no idea that I was even in an accident. They said I was screaming at the top of my lungs, that all I wanted to do was see my family, and had no idea that I was even in a car accident. To make this worse, to think about this, every 53 minutes somebody is killed by a drunk driver in this country. That means one more person has died by the time I'm done with this keynote. That is something that we can all prevent. To make it even worse, every 15 minutes somebody is killed by a drunk driver, a distracted driver, or somebody that's high and driving. That means 4 more people have died by the time I'm done with this keynote. Now, you don't have to do a show of hands, but I guarantee you there's a big percentage of you in here in this room have either ridden with somebody that's been drinking, that went out to a New Year's Eve party or a house party, gone to the bars, and you rode home with somebody that had a couple drinks. How many people have ridden with somebody that's been texting and driving or vaping and driving? It's going to happen to any one of you. It could be the first time you drink. It could be the second time you drink. It could be the 50th. Alcohol does not discriminate. It doesn't matter the color of your skin, what religion you believe in, what college you go to, or how much money you have in your bank account. Anybody that drinks and decides to get behind the wheel, this can happen to you. Now, I was a 23-year-old college student who thought I was invincible and nothing bad would ever happen to me. Never in my life did I ever think something like this would happen. And it did. And I have to live with these consequences for the rest of my life. And let me tell you, it's not easy. But here's the thing about life. When I woke up in that hospital, I had 3 choices. 1, I was going to take my life. 2, I was going to flee the country. 3, God told me to handle my responsibilities. And from that moment, I've done everything in my power to try to be a better human being. So no matter how bad your rock bottom is and no matter how bad your life is, you always have an option to change who you are. Now, when I determined that I sat in that hospital, I said I was going to do everything I could to be a better human being. I didn't know where I was going to go or what was going to happen, but I knew I was going to prison. I deserved to go to prison. I tell people all the time, I didn't do enough time in prison. You can't put a time on somebody's life. But the Colorado State Department of Corrections, they gave me a 10-year DOC prison sentence, so 10 years in prison and a 5-year parole sentence. So I got 15 years for a DUI, vehicular homicide. 15 years of my life was wiped out, and it still doesn't equate to what Bill's life was worth. But while I sat in those prison cells, I told myself every single day what I was going to do. I started writing down my goals and my ambitions and my dreams and everything that I wanted to work for, because I knew after being incarcerated, I was going to have to bust my tail to try to be a better human being. I started writing down my goals, and I started volunteering for every program that I could. I got invited to do the military DOC boot camp program. Now, this was a 90-day program. If you graduate 90 days, your judge would literally cut your time in half and let you out of prison earlier. That's how hard this program was. So in 90 days, if you graduate, you get out of prison sooner. We started with 45 guys in my platoon, and only 14 of us graduated on day 90, so 31 quit. They couldn't handle the drill instructors kicking and cussing and calling us every bad name in the book, calling your mom and dad every bad name in the book. They literally were there to break us down. But I made it through that boot camp program, and I told myself if I can make it through boot camp, I'd make it through anything else that people put in front of my way. So I volunteered for fight fires, and I took college courses while I was in prison. I did everything I could in those prison cells to better myself. Then my last stop, I told myself I would never go back. You see, this is the first time in 3 years that I was locked up in a prison where we had open cells. So you have inmates who have been locked up 10, 20, 30, 40 years, and they're watching every single move you make. You're going to the bathroom and brushing your teeth and washing your face in an open cell where you have inmates who are watching every single move you make. It is humiliating. But like I said before, I'll go back to prison in a heartbeat. I'll go back to those prison cells if I could bring back Bill. I can't. No matter how many events I do and how many people I inspire and how many people I stop from drunk driving, I can't bring Bill back. I'd go back to those cells if I could. But this is life. Like I said, as soon as you guys leave this conference room, you are faced with your choices. You are faced with your decisions, and I have to live with mine forever. Now, after 3 years of being incarcerated and being surrounded by some of the most negative people that you can imagine, like I literally was in a tier with a dude that killed 3 of his own family members over a bucket of catfish, strangled out 3 of his own brothers, and I am stuck in cells with individuals like that 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Like, it sucks. But I had this crazy ambition that when I was in prison that I was going to get out and I was going to do everything in my power to be a better person. So when I got released after 3 years, I had this crazy word. And normally I'm wearing a Desire hoodie. I had to change it up for you guys. I normally don't dress like this. This makes me feel uncomfortable. Usually wearing a Desire hat and a hoodie and all this type of stuff. But when you get out of prison, you have this thing called the penitentiary glow. You guys ever seen the movie The Hulk? No? Yeah? So like when I went into prison, I was like the skinny Bruce Banner, like the nerdy dude, like going into prison, I do the Kevin Hart thing, like, oh no, please, somebody don't shank me. I don't want to die. Like I was terrified to go into prison. But then after getting released, you have this thing called the penitentiary glow. So when I got released, I felt like the Hulk because I was surrounded by all these negative, hardcore, like killers and drug dealers and all these gangbangers and all this stuff. So when I got out of prison, I felt like I was untouchable and I was unstoppable. And I had this crazy desire that when I got free, I was going to do everything in my power to be a better human being. So after being surrounded by negativity for 3 years, I had this crazy desire that I was going to change. And I had this crazy desire that I was going to go back to school and I was going to get my college degree because I was going to prove everybody wrong that doubted me. You see, I had all these doubters and naysayers and haters and all these people who thought I was nothing but an alcoholic, a flunky, a druggie, and an alcoholic failure. So every time I do this speech, I picture every single one of those people that doubted me. And guess what? I went back to school. But I also went back and played college basketball at the age of 28, 29, and 30. Yeah. That's why your boy played at 28, 29, and 30, not because I suck, because I came fresh out of state penitentiary. Never been done before in the state of Colorado. Never been done before. I got to play college basketball as an inmate of Colorado. An inmate. I was still property of the Department of Corrections. I had parole officers showing up with a gun and a badge waiting to take me back to prison because I was a convict. I still had to call in every single day. I had DOC. I couldn't leave my house from 6 in the morning until 9 p.m. at night. I had to check in every single night. I wasn't able to go anywhere. I couldn't travel. So I played in 13 out of 33 games with my team because I literally couldn't leave Denver Metro County area. Which leads me to the next picture. I helped my team go from 5-20 to we end up going to the national tournament 2 years in a row as a player and one as a coach. I helped build that program from the worst team in the country. And that was the only reason I got to play at them, because they were the worst team in the country and the only team that would actually take a chance on a convicted felon. So I literally found the only school, and I ran the numbers. It's 0.0008% opportunity that I had to actually find a place to play. And I found it. It would have been easier to make it to the NBA if you go by numbers. So we'll say that, just because I wish I could have played in the NBA, but I couldn't really. But I bring this up because you have to understand the people that are surrounding you right now are impacted by your choices and decisions every day. These individuals right here are my teammates. Their entire lives were impacted by the choices and decisions that I made in 2003. This picture was done in 2010. 7 years later, every single one of these people in this picture, their lives were impacted by the choices and decisions that I made 7 years prior. Think about that. The choices you make today just don't impact you. They impact every person that you come in contact with. The choices that you make when you leave this room are going to impact somebody else's life, whether you realize it or not. And when you start thinking about those choices and the consequences to those actions, you change who you are as a person. I think every single day of every choice that I make, because I'm not going to end up going back to the old person that I was. Basketball was easy. I was all conference tournament MVP, and I didn't even play in half the games. My number one priority when I went back to school was to get my college degree. So my first 2 years when I went back out of prison, I went and got my first bachelor degree, and I graduated magna cum laude with 3.71. Thank you. Pretty cool, right? But here's the thing. When you actually achieve success, you get greedy. So the next year, in 1 year, I went back and got a second bachelor degree with 3 minors, and I graduated summa cum laude with a 4.0. Whoa! Check this out. While working 40 hours a week and a full-time college basketball player and a basketball coach, I slept less than 4 hours a night, 7 days a week for almost 7 years straight to accomplish these goals. Why? Because I wasn't going to let anybody take me off my path. I worked my tail off. I was awarded the Entrepreneur Student of the Year award for the business plan that I wrote in prison with a bunch of gangbangers and convicts. And I took all those business plans and I went to a college and I put them down on paper and I presented them and was awarded the Entrepreneur Student of the Year award for the stuff that I did in prison. Check this out. I always do this one because you guys can tell I kind of have an ego. Anybody that stands on stage that tells you that they don't have an ego is lying to you. You wouldn't be on stage if you didn't have one. How many of you have your name engraved on a park bench at a university? Let's just inflate my ego just a little more, right? This dude right here. I was awarded the President's Award, the highest academic achievement you can get on any college campus. I was awarded for my grades and my community support, not my jump shot, not my crossover, but for my grades. In 3 years, I got 2 bachelor degrees and 3 minors, and I went and got a master's degree on top of that and graduated with honors. And it's because of the choices and decisions that I made coming out of prison that I was not going to let anybody stop me. I have my name engraved on a park bench. Like, how cool is that? But I say this not to brag or boast or any of that. I just do that for jokes. But if I can achieve this, what can every single one of you do? Every one of you in this room is smarter than I am. I guarantee you that. What I will say is, I bet you not one of you will outwork me. There isn't going to be one person in this room that outworks me for what I believe in. That I will stand on. That's why I'm successful in what I do, because I won't let anything or anybody stop me from what I'm about to do. I didn't let the pandemic destroy my career. It almost did, but I wasn't going to let it happen, and I outworked the pandemic. That's the only reason why I'm standing here today. So if I can do this, any one of you can. So in 2014, I had to make a decision, and I talk about choices all the time. 2014, April 1st, I'll never forget this day. I was released from parole in prison and done with my DOC sentence. April 1st. Funny story is I thought it was an April Fool's joke from my parole officer because he called me up and was like, hey, we're releasing you today. I was like, dude, it's April 1st. Are you messing with me? He's like, oh, no, I wouldn't do that to you. That's messed up. But I got released on April 1st. And so about 2 months later, I had to make a decision in my life. I had an opportunity to play professional basketball at the age of 34. The same weekend I was supposed to fly down to my team in South America, I got asked to speak for USA Basketball in a basketball camp in Iowa. And I called up my coach and I asked him what I should do, and he said, do not burn that bridge with USA Basketball. So guess what I did? I chose this speaking career over finishing my dream of playing professional basketball because I believe so much in what I do as a speaker. This is why I wake up every single day. This is my purpose, this is my passion, and I'll say this again. Because everything that I work for is what you guys see. Because if I can change one person's life and get them to seek a counselor or seek help or get them to not drink and drive, I've done my job. So you will always have choices. No matter how many positive choices you make in this life, you're always going to have to make choices that are going to impact who you are. And I want to leave you with these 5 keys because these are the 5 tangible things that I do every single day of my life. These things, I promise you, if you live by these things, you will change who you are as a person. They are easy, but they take hard work and consistency. I live by these every day, and it's the only reason why I still have a career and doing what I'm doing. Number 1 is accountability. I will never blame anybody for ever getting me drunk or high. That's on me. I'm the one that made a decision to choose to drink. I'm the one that went to that house party. I can't blame my friends. I should have been strong enough to say no. I won't blame my wife for the divorce. There were so many things that I could have done differently during this pandemic that would have changed our life and our direction. I have to hold myself accountable to that. I can't blame her. Number 2, set goals. I don't care if you got small goals, daily goals, weekly goals, monthly goals, but have goals. Write them down. There is scientific proof from the Harvard study that if you write down your goals, you are 30 times more likely to achieve your goals. Think about that, just by writing them down. 30 times more likely. Now I do everything to the extreme, so I got 5 goal boards in my office. I got daily goals, weekly goals, monthly goals. I got goals for the next 25 years of my life, and guess what? I see them every single day, and I continuously write them down because I figure if I see them, how am I going to approach them and how am I going to achieve them? I've got big, audacious goals that people would laugh at if they knew. But I see them every day because I know I'm going to get to them one way or somehow. Write down your goals. It pays off. Number 3 is choices and decisions. This entire speech is based off of choices. My hope is that you guys are all going to leave this and make a choice when you go back to your house or your apartment or your dorm, and you're going to be like, man, I need to change my thought about mental health. I need to change who I am as a person around drugs and alcohol. And I'm going to make a choice to take the keys from somebody. I'm going to call a counselor. That is a choice that you will make at this moment that will impact not only your life, but other people's lives around you. That's my hope. But some of you are going to make a decision and be like, oh, great story. Dude went through a lot, but I don't drink like that. I don't battle depression like that. I'm not going to have that happen to me. That's the same thought process I would have had if I was sitting in your audience right now. That won't happen to me. And the reality is it does. Number 4 is perseverance. No matter how many good choices you make in this life, you are always going to have doubters and naysayers and people telling you can't do something. You're always going to have a boss or a professor or a business owner or your family that are telling you you're not good enough or smart enough or you're not capable of doing something. So no matter how many choices you make in this life, you are always going to have people trying to bring you down. What do you have inside that's going to make you persevere? What do you have inside? For me, it's that desire. I will not let anybody bring me down from what I'm trying to do in this life. It's up to you. Only you. Nobody will make your choices for you. Nobody is going to stop you from doing what you're going to do except for yourself. So find whatever it is inside because you're going to have to persevere. Now, my last one is faith. Now, I don't care if you believe in anything or nothing or Buddha or Jesus or Allah, but if you have faith in the choices and decisions that you make and you have faith in the person that you are and where you're going in this life, no one will stop you. I have faith every single day that this is my job and my purpose, and this is why I wake up. I have faith that during the pandemic, when everything was trying to be wiped out from me, that I knew I had to keep pushing and I knew I had to keep surviving because this is what I'm supposed to be doing. I have faith every day that while I work on this speech every single day, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. So have faith in who you are as a person, have faith in who you are as the choices and decisions you make, and I promise you, your life will be completely different. Now I could leave you right here on this positive note, right? Be like, oh man, faith, this is awesome. Let's leave this thing and feel all goody two-shoe and all this happy stuff. That's not life. No matter how many choices you make and how many good things you make, you are always going to deal with struggle and trauma. But it comes down to this. All it takes is one bad decision, one bad choice to live with lifelong consequences. Thank you. Do we have time? Okay. So this next couple minutes is up to you guys. I always open up for Q&A. So if you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, if you want to talk about something, let me get this out. This contact information is all for you. That is a private student number for every person that I've ever spoke to. If you guys ever need something, you can always reach out. But let me do this disclaimer. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a lawyer. I can't prescribe you anything. I can't help you with all that, but I will do what I can to get you to the right resources and the right people. And I promise you, I will answer every text that I get. That's what I do. It might take 24 hours because I'm on the road. Like I'm on the road today until October 6th, but I promise you, I will get to you within the next 24 hours to 48 at the latest. So with that being said, anybody got some questions? Or do you guys all come for the pizza and not me? After I got out of prison, was my bond stronger with my brothers? Yeah. So my little brother from the picture, I actually have taken him. He didn't know he was a part of my keynote. And I actually took him to a basketball camp in Iowa for the basketball stuff. And I did it while he was sitting in the audience. And he and I just stared at each other and cried for about 10 minutes while 300 basketball players were staring at us. It was kind of uncomfortable. But we have a bond that is pretty unshakable. So my family knows how much I appreciate him, even if we fight at times. Because families fight, that's the reality. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yep. 2000. So I had 2 beers in 2004. And I wish I wouldn't even have done that. It was more of I sat with my dad and had 2 beers because we thought I was going to prison for the next 2 years. And I remember drinking the 2 Coronas and I didn't even want them. So I will never go down that path again. I will never, I won't even use pain meds because that stuff scares me. Honestly, no, I didn't. And that's probably hard for this, this group because you guys are a bunch of nurses or training to be nurses. And it's not because I didn't have anybody there. It was because of the situations in which I was. I don't remember what the nurses did with me on the day that I found out that I took Bill's life. I was so out of it. I don't remember much other than the 2 nurses talking to me. And then I went straight to the mental health ward after that. And so I checked myself in voluntarily to make sure that my brain was still attached to my spinal cord. People wanted to make sure I was okay. And then after that, I was on what they call a PR bond for 8 months until I got sentenced to prison. So my time with nurses was less than, I think I might have been less than 24 hours. But I will say this, my dad was in ICU in 2019 for an aneurysm. And I sat by his bedside because he was on, we didn't know if he was going to live or die for 32 or 36 days. And I will say the ER nurses, the ICU nurses, like anytime I get an opportunity to say thank you, because those nurses took care of my dad and he's alive because of that. So I know in that situation how much that meant. So you guys should give yourselves a round of applause because that's what you guys are about to do, right? All right, thank you.
Thank you for coming. So Ethan mentioned mental health and counseling, and a lot of students don't realize that we do contract with a counseling agency called Aspire, and they offer limited professional counseling to our students as confidential. If you want information about that, just email studentlife@laniertech.edu. That's the same email address that we sent out the information about this event. So please email, or if you need other resources, myself, Carrie Register, Megan, we can help get you in touch with resources. Thank you so much for coming today. Be sure to fill out your surveys. There's more pizza in the back. We do have door prizes, so check under your chair and see if you have a red ticket taped to the bottom of your chair. Then you've won a door prize. If there are empty chairs at your table, check those. You may have a better chance with the empty chairs. And then go to the back table to claim your door prize. And you can keep the pens. Everybody. Table. Thank you for coming. I don't know how to put this back.